Hello, this is Gray Hughes of Gray Hughes Investigates on YouTube. Please hit that like button, share the video, and subscribe. But hit that like button for me really quick. That would be awesome. So there's new information in the Kohberger case. We have the information of what he bought at Albertsons, what book he was referencing on page 118, apparently they found written down somewhere. They have that. And we have one additional piece of surveillance footage showing the vehicle coming back into Pullman, Washington. So let's start off with that really quick. So as we know, after Kohberger killed Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison, Mogen, and Kaylee Goncalves between, I'm actually going to say between 4/12 and 4/19 on November 13th, 2022 in Moscow, Idaho. We know that after that he sped away at a high rate of speed, and he went like this. It's kind of cluttered in here, but you can still see right there that is Queen Road, and then he went north onto King Road right there, and then he turned and went around like this. This is when he was leaving at a high rate of speed, and then he drove around on Willanta Drive, and then he was on Sunnyside Avenue. Then he turned west onto Conestoga Drive, and then Conestoga takes him out to Palouse River Drive, and there's a whole bunch of various ways that he eventually drove down and got onto Highway 95. Now, Highway 95 now goes like this, all right? But at the time, Highway 95 went like this. This was under construction at the time. And so I have a route that brings him all the way around, and you see it in green here. It goes like this, and I have updated it where he cuts in right there, goes through Blaine, and then comes out right at the same, near that same intersection. There is a cell tower right there. So that cell tower, when he turned his phone on, would know precisely what direction he was or what segment of the cell tower his phone pinged on. So then Kohberger drove around and makes his way across a very desolate area. There's almost nothing out in this area here, and then makes his way over near Colton, and then heads up north towards Pullman, and then turns right here on Kirkendall Road and drove around like this. And then you see another sort of not necessary out of the way route, and then turns left on Johnson Road right here. If you go down to Street View here, there's a camera, two cameras actually. There's one on this side of the building right there, and then another one on this side of the building. Now it turns out that the one on this side actually filmed the car, the Elantra, driving by. So let's take a look at that. So here it is now. Notice in this video right here, see the pile of rocks here and that wood fence, and then it goes this direction, then around the corner. Well, if we go back to Street View, we can see that right there. There's the wood fence, there's the pile of rocks, and the camera obviously would be on this side of the building filming. That's from this side looking back over there. There's another camera to the right on the building. So if we look at this, this is 5 o'clock. They give a full, like an hour's worth, I believe, and maybe 40 minutes or so. So here is 5:23, 27 seconds. I'll just move it forward. Okay, that's 4:24. So in a moment here, you'll see the vehicle driving by. I'm not sure. I don't think it was 5:25, 59. Let's see. I think it's 5:26. This one might be adjusted, though, time frame. So it's going to be coming by. Let's take a look. So on this camera, it's 5:26:59. So see this vehicle right here? There it is. And you can see it's the white vehicle, white Elantra, and they believe that's him based on the timing of, his phone pinging back in Pullman, Washington. So we'll take a look at that again. Now at the beginning, in this document right here, let's go back to this really quick. In this document right here, it talks about, you know, how much off the camera is, or if it is at all. Like this one says accurate. Let's see, 1125 Ridge Road, local time. It looks like they're going to go through all of these. This is 1455 Bishop Boulevard, approximately 7 seconds behind. Let's see, let's go up in the air here really quick on Google Earth. This is 1300 Johnson Avenue. So let's see what it says about that in here. There it is. 1300 Johnson Avenue. Camera time is approximately 1 minute and 30 seconds off. There you go. That makes sense. So if we go down to the bottom here where it gives the time frame of that camera, and let's see, right here it says 1300 Johnson Avenue. Summary: a vehicle matching the description of vehicle 1 is seen traveling northbound on Johnson Avenue. Now this says 5:26:59. You see that right there? So that is the time that you see on the camera. But what's interesting is they didn't back out the minute 30, right? So if you took out the minute 30, that would be 5:25:29, and then you have 5:25:30 here at 14:55 Bishop Boulevard. It's another camera. It's at a gas station just down the road, so it picked up the same vehicle from a distance coming towards it. All right, so that is right here at this Sunset Mart here. I think if we put in 14:55 Bishop in Pullman, it should end up right around in that area. Yep, see, there you go, right here. So when the vehicle passed right here, like that, this camera that's on this building is actually facing that direction and could already pick it up like a second later. So the time that it drove by here is actually 5:35:29. If we back out approximately a minute 30 from this, so it'd be 5:25:29. All right, hopefully that made sense to you guys. So go back to here. Let's play that again. So it should be, you know, if this time was correct, it would have been coming up here in a second, but this is a minute 30 off. So we'll move it forward. Let's go right here. So it's coming up in 30 seconds. And then again, there's a camera down to the right on another building that's going to be picking it up right after this. But you can definitely see that it's a, you know, it's a white sedan. You know, it's blurry because it's at night and the frames per second, you know, or I guess the shutter speed's open. You know, it's trying to take in as much light as possible. But you can see right near the end there that that's the white vehicle speeding back to Pullman, Washington, and it matches up with his phone pinging in the area at the same time. All right, so there you go. I hope that explains that portion. So now we'll move on to some new information that was put in an Idaho Statesman news article. So we'll just go through some of the highlights in there. Kohberger bought a K-bar knife sheath and sharpener on Amazon in March of 2022. I think we all knew that, while still living in Pennsylvania. And that's interesting because then he moves and he purchased, you know, part of his, you know, if you want to call it a kill kit or whatever, he bought it back then. I'm not a big fan of that term, by the way. He later tried to delete after his purchase history with the online retailer, he told the court. In addition, since Kohberger moved to the region, his phone connected to the cell tower that serves the 1122 King Road address 23 times. Now, on the Dateline documentary, they said that his phone was within 100 meters of the home, but we've never heard any of the officials say that. They just say that utilize the same, you know, cell site resources. Kohberger's cell phone also was turned off for about 2 hours the morning of the murders, including the window where police believe he killed the 4 students, Thompson said. His phone location data also indicated he returned to the King Road coverage area later that morning between 9:12 a.m. and 9:21 a.m., according to the probable cause affidavit signed by Payne. The King Road neighbor's security camera did not show Kohberger's white Elantra again between those times. So that's exactly what I've told everybody. Had his Elantra been seen when he drove back to Pullman that morning, had it been seen on that camera, we would have heard about it, in that, especially in that document that I just showed you that lays out the entire timeline of all of the surveillance footage. All right? He did not go back to the residence. I think he drove by to see what mayhem he had brought, and maybe there wasn't any. Or he knew that there was no mayhem and just wanted to kind of view from a distance. There's a road behind the Sigma Chi house. Now his vehicle is spotted on camera when he drove back that morning, right over here, right next to the same A&W that the night of the homicides. He's on I think it's Steiner Avenue here, and then he goes on to Lauder and then goes up to Taylor Avenue. But that morning he drives by here at 9:12. Now maybe he drove like this, and then he turned on this road right here, and then drove right back here, because from back here you can see the residence on Nez Perce Drive. And then perhaps at that point he drove back out, made his way to the highway, and then went straight back to Pullman. All right? So that's just a possible theory, but he definitely wasn't going back to look for the knife sheath. All right? That would be absolutely ludicrous to do at 9:15 in the morning when people are out and about moving around. Later that day, Kohberger's cell data showed he traveled from Pullman south to the area of Clarkston, Washington, and Lewiston, Idaho, about 8 hours after the King Road murders. Their surveillance video showed he exited the Elantra consistent with suspect vehicle 1 from the neighborhood security footage and walked into the Albertsons in Clarkston. He went through the self-checkout stand and bought only a pre-packaged Starbucks Frappuccino coffee drink. So that's, that makes that, what did he buy? What did he buy there? At the Albertsons, it's boring. He bought a Frappuccino. Oftentimes in true crime, the actual fact isn't as interesting as the imagination that people have when they think about what may have happened. Kohberger left the grocery store at around 1 p.m. and pinged again to a cell tower just after 5:30 p.m., about 25 miles north in Johnson, Washington. What Kohberger did during that time, and also according to the affidavit during another 3-hour window where his cell phone again stopped reporting to the network until 8:30 p.m., they still don't have answers for what he was doing during that time. And so that part is right over, let's see, we go over at Johnson. Right here, this is Johnson, Washington, and there is a cell tower right there. All right, so when he drove by, he turned it on for 4 minutes, and then there was also a witness that said that he spotted the Elantra, or a white vehicle, it didn't say Elantra, right here next to this tree. He saw a vehicle parked there. And then when law enforcement went there, they found disturbed dirt. This is in the newer documents that came out. But they didn't find anything. And that's interesting, right? Because that is near Johnson. And it's also near where he turned right here. So that morning, when he was driving back, look at this. If he was right there, he could have just turned quickly, dumped the items, then came right back, and then drove this direction. And that would have only taken maybe 2 minutes tops out of his time. And then that's when he drove by the camera that I just showed you. But it's interesting. That is so close right there. How far is that? Let's see. I just noticed this just now while I'm making this video. Let's do miles here. That's only 1.5 miles from right there, and that he could have driven down there, disposed of those items, and then later in the evening he came back, because that's the time at 5:32 to 5:36. That's the time frame that the individual saw a white vehicle parked next to this tree here, and when law enforcement went out there, there was disturbed dirt as if something had been buried there. Was that Kohberger picking up the items later so that he could move them once he realized nobody was on his trail? I think that's pretty interesting. All right, back to this. What Kohberger did during that time, and also according to the affidavit during another 3-hour window where the cell phone again stopped reporting to the network until 8:30 p.m., is still unknown. The decisive error that led Kohberger to leave the knife sheath behind was likely, see, they don't know why the knife sheath was left there, but they think it's likely on account of Kernodle, Gilbertson said. She was still awake and in the middle of eating a late-night order of Jack-in-the-Box delivered by DoorDash. Now, I think that they were able to determine that she had just eaten that food based on the autopsy and examining the contents of her stomach. She was still awake and in the middle of eating a late-night order of Jack-in-the-Box delivered by DoorDash, Gilbertson said. Kernodle likely heard Mogen and Goncalves in distress and went upstairs to check on them, he said. She certainly did go up the stairs. So when they say she certainly did go up the stairs, that means they have some sort of forensic evidence of some sort. I mean, that's pretty interesting. They are certain that Kernodle went up the stairs. Now, if you watch my animation that I made, it seems to track pretty well what they are talking about. Fortunately, that's what stopped him up there and caused him to screw up and leave the knife sheath, was either hearing or seeing Xana, and that took his attention away and he followed her down the stairs to her bedroom. You know, and that makes a hell of a lot of sense. I think it's still a very likely and, you know, just as likely possibility that Kohberger left the knife sheath there intentionally as a calling card. He had already prepared it and it was sitting, you know, he might have already kind of just tucked it in there before Xana came up. I don't think Madison and Kaylee were still alive when Xana went up there, or he would have had to go back upstairs after that, after chasing Xana, to finish them off, right? He'd have to have already killed Madison and Kaylee to be able to then chase Xana down the stairs and to her room. So I think it's like he'd already killed them, then Xana went upstairs after they were already dead, but maybe she had heard the sound and it was just within seconds, and maybe he was tucking the knife sheath in. Then Xana comes up and he chases her with the knife that he had. I mean, we don't know. We don't know why he would go in there with a loose knife sheath not on his belt or anything like that. So that's just how I look at it. I think it could be either way. I actually hope that he left it there intentionally because that will eat away at his soul for the rest of his life. In mid-December, Kohberger's father flew to Pullman, and they began a cross-country trip back to Pennsylvania in his son's white Honda Elantra. During the drive, they were pulled over by law enforcement twice in a 10-minute span just east of Indianapolis in stops that the FBI long denied had anything to do with him being tailed. Kohberger and his father were back in Pennsylvania by December 16th, and the FBI had not landed on his name until December 19th. I mean, so that's crazy, right? So that means, if this is all true right here, that when Kohberger was pulled over both those times, it was pure coincidental, but that absolutely heightened his paranoia dramatically. And I think that's why he was in the kitchen, separating his trash, washing his car over and over and over again, because he was paranoid because of those two stops. I think otherwise he would have felt comfortable at home. The case lead prosecutor also recently reiterated to the New York Times that the back-to-back traffic stops were totally coincidental. I mean, that's just unbelievable, isn't it? Kohberger had interest in becoming a professor, he told the two Idaho detectives, because he loved college, and knowledge was far more important to him than money, the report read. Kohberger also considered entering law enforcement, but did not want to become a police officer unless he was certain, he said. Just an hour earlier, members of the state and federal law enforcement, I'm cutting out some stuff, so it's talking about the night that he was arrested. So it said, just an hour earlier, members of state and federal law enforcement burst into Kohberger's parents' home to arrest him and execute a search warrant. Kohberger was already awake upstairs and appeared to be sorting miscellaneous garbage, Gilbertson said. During overnight surveillance in the days leading up to his arrest, Kohberger was observed once very late at night walking in dark clothing around his parents' neighborhood, but reports that law enforcement witnessed him throwing trash away in his neighbor's garbage were untrue, Gilbertson said. Oh, that's interesting. I mean, that's something that was absolutely believed and said by news outlets and reporters and, you know, other experts for every book that's out said that. That's crazy. Reports that claimed they saw Kohberger using bleach to clean his car, which he drove back to Pennsylvania with his father, were also false. But it sounds like he took apart the car, that's what Bill Thompson said, and really cleaned it. I think that was online stuff, Gilbertson told the Statesman. We did not even through surveillance see that or observe that at all. Kohberger made a break for it as police forcefully entered and tried to get downstairs, headed for his room in the basement, he said. So that's interesting. He tried to make a break for it and get away. Included on the search warrant list of dozens of items police seized from the Kohberger's home were a Glock handgun, 2 items identified as a green leafy substance, and a book with underlining on page 118. Now, the book was called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. You know, it makes you wonder, did he bring his gun with him that night, and was he actually holding the gun in front of him while he was exiting the house? Maybe that's what sort of looked triangular to Dylan Mortensen. So anyways, the book, Gilbertson said, was titled Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers, a self-help book about techniques for turning anger and indecision into action. Gilbertson didn't know what had been underlined, but he said it remained in police evidence. Kohberger's disposition during their interview was calm and relaxed, Payne told reporters. Kohberger didn't ask why he was there until deep into the conversation. The suspect showed no signs of anger, concerns, or the appearance of being rattled. There was none of that, he said. That was very strange to be going through and seeing that type of behavior, his expressions. It's what you see in court, direct eye contact. He stares directly at you. But when he and Payne referenced the case in Moscow, Kohberger shut down and no longer had interest in talking. He sat back in his chair, said he had the utmost respect for law enforcement, but that he had a constitutional right to an attorney, according to the report. The 2 Idaho detectives concluded the interview. So there you go. I mean, some of that stuff is, you know, repeated information that we've heard in different interviews and different documents. But, yeah, I mean, we now know he was drinking Starbucks. We know the name of the book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. We now know that he wasn't throwing trash in the neighbor's garbage can. We also see the surveillance footage on Johnson Avenue on the morning of the homicides as he's pulling back into town. All right, everybody, thank you very much for watching the video. I think I brought some pretty interesting elements into it, especially this part right here. It's very close to where he was turning on Kirkendall Road, and then if he just turned here, he could have put the early in the morning, he could have put the weapon and dirty clothing, the bloody clothing, right here, and then driven right back this way, drives by surveillance, and amazingly, almost exactly the same time, 12 hours later, a white car is spotted right here. And then when police went there, there was disturbed dirt, and they think possibly something was buried there but removed. All right, well, thank you all very much for watching the video. I really appreciate it. I hope you found it interesting. If you could hit that like button, that'd be awesome. Share the video and subscribe. And, as I always say, until next time, be safe out there.